Okay, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the Bloomfield Immigration webinar. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tade Leo Adegun, and I'm thrilled to welcome you to today's webinar, and I'm honored to be your host. I am an associate in the Immigration, Labor, and Employment Practice Group at Bloomfield LP. Bloomfield LP is a leading full-service law firm headquartered in Ikoyi, Lagos State, and our expertise, including immigration, labor, and employment, spans various sectors, including aviation, banking and finance, consumer goods, energy, real estate, disputes, and many more. We recently celebrated our 17th year anniversary, and we are dedicated to providing exceptional legal support to our esteemed clientele. Particularly, our immigration group is renowned for its expertise in corporate immigration across different continents, including Africa and South Africa. Our webinars serve as educational platforms which are aimed at enlightening our audience with immigration processes to minimize rejections and ensure informed decision-making. In our most recent webinar, we discussed visa refusals. Our managing partner, Mr. Kunle Obebe, who is also the chair of the Immigration, Labor, and Employment Practice Group, provided invaluable insights on prevention, appeals, and reapplications for immigration processes. And today we are privileged to welcome two distinguished immigration experts to shed light on demystifying South African immigration processes. So without further ado, let me introduce our esteemed panelists. First, we have Mr. Johannes Tiba. I hope I got that name correctly because I checked on Google and I saw different pronunciations, so I stuck with my guns. Mr. Tiba is a director at Fragomen Johannesburg office. He has over 18 years of experience, 18 years of experience in South African immigration services. Mr. Tiba brings clearly a wealth of knowledge and expertise to our discussion today. Now, prior to joining Fragomen, Mr. Tiba served as the regional immigration head for the Citibank area in Gauteng province in South Africa, which adds to the body of knowledge that he's here to present to us today. Mr. Tiba also holds a master's degree in public management and development from the Northwest University. So we know we're here for a good ride. Thank you so much, Mr. Tiba, with your presence today. Thank you. Now, next we have Miss Mapota Lindiwe, who is a senior manager at Fragomen Johannesburg office, and she has over 2 decades of experience in immigration consulting. Ms. Lindiwe is a well-rounded professional with expertise not only in immigration, but also in tax compliance, fiduciary services, and estate planning. Ms. Lindiwe holds an honors degree in business management. Thank you so much, Ms. Lindiwe, for joining us today. It's our pleasure once again to have you join us as we take on the topic of demystifying South African immigration processes. Now, we recognize the complexities, right, of visa and immigration applications. We recognize the financial implications and the potential frustration plus emotional strain that can be associated with these processes, right? And one of the reasons we have organized this webinar is to equip our audience with the essential knowledge that is needed to successfully navigate, particularly the South African visa application process. So today's discussion is going to be premised on that. We have prepared some questions for our esteemed guests, our esteemed panelists, but we also encourage you in the chat room to drop your questions. Feel free to submit your questions. Feel free to participate in the comment section. we would ensure that your questions are addressed. And if cannot be addressed in this session, you can always send us an email and we would revert accordingly. So without further delay, let's just dive into the heart of our conversation. Mr. Tiba, Ms. Lindiwe, are we ready?
Thank you. We are ready.
Awesome, awesome.
You.
Okay, so awesome. Thank you very much. All right, so to our first question, so we'll direct this to Mr. Tiba, right? So okay. Mr. Tiba, what are the available visa options for short-term business visits and work purposes in Nigeria? In addition to that, we would like to know if for work purposes, you require a corporate sponsor to obtain such visas. So just to reiterate, visa options for short-term business visits and work purposes, and whether or not a corporate sponsor, as a company in South Africa, is required to sponsor and obtain the visa. Okay. Over to you, Mr. Tiba.
Thank you. Thank you so much. A very good afternoon to you. Thank you, Ms. Tade, for inviting us to this webinar and for Bloomberg for organizing it. But most importantly, to our participants who have made time to speak to be with us at this event this afternoon. In as far as the questions is concerned, concerning South African immigration system, for short-term business visits, we normally use a visitor's visa. Now, that visitor's visa is generally endorsed to permit one to actually undertake that business activity. One thing that I would like to note is that it's always advisable that the host organization invites such an individual to visit them in South Africa. In as far as work is concerned, we do have work for which you find that the duration is 5 years. Is 5 years, but before going to the aspect of those long-term visa, I would like to also touch on what you call short-term work visa. Short-term work visa, that will be for those who have to attend to emergency maintenances or repairs. We normally call it Section 11.2 visa for those who are coming for emergency repairs. If you can permit me, while I'm still on these issues of work, to touch on even long-term work visas, we do have those who are coming to do work for which you don't have skills for. We normally call them general work visa. It's for 5 years, and there must always be a sponsor. So what therefore happens is that the employer who is offering that employment must have done a labor test to find out whether there's no one who can actually provide that kind of service. In most cases where the employer is unable to obtain that labor certificate, an employer is also allowed in terms of the law to obtain a waiver from the minister. The waiver takes time. We like whoever is interested in doing that to take, to ensure that it's applied for well ahead of time. The most important thing about it is that it leads to permanent residency after 5 years of holding it. Now, going to the second one, it deals with those people who are on a critical skill, who are having skills that as a country we deem as critical for economy. Those are, that is a critical skills work visa. There's a list that is updated quite regularly. And as that list is updated quite regularly, your skills may appear in that list. And it's also issued for 5 years. It's renewable, but most importantly is that you can apply for permanent residence. You don't have actually that limitation of about 5 years within which you can apply. You can apply as soon as you have received it. The last one, I think this one applies to companies that have branches in South Africa, for which they want to send somebody who is going to South Africa for the purposes of transferring skills to the identified understudies. So that one is issued for 4 years. It's issued for 4 years. It does not lead to permanent residency. It cannot be renewed. However, you can reapply for a new one from a country of residence, from a country of origin. So that's in a nutshell the kinds of visas that we have for work and for business purposes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tiba. Thank you for that wonderful insight. So just to recap, you had mentioned the short-term work visa, which can be gotten for maintenance or repair or emergency work and would require a sponsor from a South African country. You also delved into the long-term work visa for those that may not have skill, but it's a general work visa for 5 years, I believe.
Yeah,
5
correct.
years. Yes, and then the labor test requirements as well, or the waiver, right?
Yes.
But all of these visa options seem to come with a necessary company sponsor.
Correct.
So, from the requirement of an SA visa. What countries are exempt, if any, and are there like further pre-arrival entry requirements that they might still require when they get to South Africa?
Okay. We do have quite a lot of countries that have been exempt from visa requirements in South Africa, and the list continues to grow practically every year. And because of the negotiations that have to take place before that, it appears that it takes a bit slow, but from time to time, authorities include a new country. I think last year we noted that Ghana was included, Kenya was included. So that continues to grow from time to time. So other countries that are not included in the visa waiver, you'll find that those countries can apply for a visa at the nearest diplomatic mission of South Africa, or can apply for an e-visa. So an e-visa, obviously, it will be online, and as it is online, it can be issued for up to 90 days. We do see people do extend, as it is a normal visa, but it's issued for up to 90 days. And in most cases, the authorities tend to look at the duration of your ticket in the case of a e-visa for you to be issued with it for the required time frame.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much, sir. You mentioned e-visas, and I think
Yes.
that leads me to my next question, which was actually with respect to e-visas, right?
Yes.
So we're aware that SA has introduced the e-visa, but would like to know, is it available for all countries,
Yes.
right? Are Nigerians eligible?
Yes.
Can you walk us through the process
Yes.
for obtaining
Yes.
this e-visa and the eligibility requirements, the duration, and all the relevant information, challenges, really, all necessary details
Thank
with
you.
respect to these e-visas?
Thank you. The most important thing about the e-visa is that at the moment it's actually open to all nationals. At the beginning, when the authorities were in a pilot process, they did open it for selected nationals so that they can see how the system works. But of great importance is that the normal standard requirements for a visa apply, like the completion of the form, provision of proof of income, the flight details. If you have been invited by anyone, provide that letter of invitation. I'll also like to point out that most recently, the authorities have been emphasizing on ensuring that if you provide a bank statement, the bank statement must be certified by the bank that issued it. So a lot of rejections in as far as e-visas come in that area where you find that the bank statement that was issued was not certified by the issuing authority. I'd also like to point out that from time to time, the system has issues like any other system of that nature. We recommend or we advise our clients to please be patient, to try it a bit later if it appears to be slow or is not uploading documentations, that at the time when one is making such an application, there are also many people around the world who are also trying that. As such, we request patience as much as possible in doing that. Unfortunately, South Africa is not like many countries like Nigeria, where you do have a visa on arrival. We do not have such an option in South Africa of a visa on arrival. So as such, if you cannot get the visa from the diplomatic mission, use the e-visa. And please, at the moment, we also had issues regarding issuance of such a visa timely. That continues to come up from time to time. But if you intend to travel using the e-visa, we always recommend that you please apply on time, because they do try to ensure that they clear them long before the departure time. Thank you.
Just to add to what Mr. Tiba you said, I think you mentioned that the e-visa might take time, and it's important as well to outline the current processing time, so that when applicants start to plan their traveling, they are aware that currently it takes between 2 to 3 weeks for an e-visa. The intention was for Home Affairs to finalize the application within a week, but due to the current delays that is at Home Affairs, the e-visa takes up to 3 to 4 weeks. Thank you. I just wanted to add to what you said.
Thank you.
Okay, awesome. Just before we move to another question, we'd like to clarify, what's the duration of that e-visa?
Fantastic. Yes, the duration is managed by two things. The first one can be the duration of the ticket that you have obtained. In most cases, people apply for e-visa because they have to leave as soon as possible, and they are going to just a short trip and then come back. Therefore, the authorities tend to limit the visit to the validity of the ticket. I must point out that we have actually reached out to the authorities to ask them to please reconsider that, to maybe ensure that it's longer. For instance, it can be 30 days, can be 60 days, within which one can travel in and out until its validity has come to an end. Why we were asking them to review that is because there are places where you find that flights may be cancelled. And if a flight can be cancelled on the date of your departure, it means that you cannot be able to travel. And as such, you end up falling foul of having overstayed in the country. So we were trying to avoid that, so that people cannot find themselves in situations that they never planned for. But if we are also we're on our side, we're also looking at the issue of the impact on tourism. If people are in the country for a longer time, they're able to exploit, build businesses, build networks, but most importantly, to come again. But if you are coming for just a short time, attend to that conference, that meeting, and you are on the next flight, prospects of you coming back to the country are nil.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So for our audience, just a quick reminder, you can drop your questions in the Q&A section, Q&A, not in the chat room, but in the Q&A. And I'll be able to see them and direct them to our panelists. Thank you very much. So we'll move to the next question. Would like to know, are there any recent updates to the South African visa application process that applicants should be aware of? That is, aside the e-visa, maybe, since we've delved on that a bit.
So the updates, I think I'll also touch on that a bit later, is that South African immigration system is in a state of flux. And then as a result, you'll find that there are new changes that are coming in. The first one is that the immigration regulations are being reviewed, and they have been reviewed to such an extent that they will introduce new visas to the current bouquet that we have. The first one, the authorities are looking at having the nomadic visa. We'll touch upon it a bit later. The other one is a startup visa that they will look at a later stage. And finally will be the point-based immigration system that the authorities will also look at. As such, there is a consultation process that is going on now that will end on the 29th, in 3 days, on the 29th of March. We, on our site, we reached out to all our clients to encourage them to make inputs, because some of the changes that have been proposed may have an impact on them. And we continue to encourage them, even though that 3 days is left, that please take your time to make an input on how you want the new changes to be molded.
Yeah. If you can just allow me to add them, Mr. Tiba, other changes that are already being implemented, for instance, there's police clearance certificates.
Yes.
Okay. Previously, an applicant is required to provide police clearance certificate for each country that is resided in for more than a year. Now, the changes that have been implemented, only police clearance certificate from the last 5 years. So Home Affairs have taken away that time of gathering police clearances where an assignee has resided for more than a year from the age of 18 years. And also the changes that are already implemented, they don't have to provide a radiological report where the checks of TB, tuberculosis will be done. So only a medical report is required. And we believe that it is a great change because it is also reducing in the processing time of end to end to get the work visa. And also the changes, rather, just to allude to what my colleague has said, the regulations that have been proposed is for the in-country submission for a parent of a South African or PR holder child, as well as the spouse of a South African citizen and a PR holder. Such application can be done in the country.
Awesome.
Thank
awesome.
You.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. So on to our next question. We'll recap this a while later. So our next question is, are there any additional resources or services available to assist applicants expedite visa applications? Or if a person is having issues with the visa process, who might they reach out to assist with the process? Mr. Tiba, do you mind?
Okay, thank you. In as far as expedited service, South Africa is one of those countries that does not have an expedited service. Like, for instance, other countries. And unfortunately, even the law, in terms of the law does not make it clear like you may have in Nigeria, where if, for instance, something was not finalized by a certain time frame, is considered finalized, default approvals. We do not have that can minimize delays for clients. We do not have an expedited processing. As such, the authorities, when we raised it, they've indicated that they are considering looking at, one, reviewing the fees that people pay for visas and work visas in general, but also to add expedited fee, i.e. they call it a premium fee on that. So it's a process. They still have to have a public consultation on it, devise ways as to how they will do it. But what we normally recommend our clients is that as and when you have something that is urgent, let me make an example. We currently have one big Nigerian company that will be providing having a sort of a gas, exporting gas to South Africa, and then they'll be having a gas facility somewhere in I think it's in the Cape or around KwaZulu-Natal. As and when individuals like that were involved in something of national interest and inform us that we have to be in South Africa by a specific date, we'll be doing such and such a thing, we'll be having so many experts who will be coming in to work in South Africa for a certain time frame. If they inform us ahead of time, we can actually reach out to the authorities on their behalf to inform them about this initiative, that there is this initiative coming. So many people will be required to undertake such an initiative. They will be applying at this mission. Would like you to please assist them urgently so that they can be able to meet their contractual obligations. So in our experience, we have noted that works, but it goes hand in hand with planning, doing things ahead of time, liaising with your immigration advisors to have this thing slotted ahead of time so that your business operations cannot be affected at all.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So planning, awesome. So we understand from this that for companies that have things, businesses of maybe a national purpose or national interest, they can reach out to you, and then you can, that's Fragomen, right?
Yes,
and then
they can reach out to us. Yes, they can reach out to us.
Reach out to the authorities
yes,
to assist with expertising, but it's important that they plan appropriately.
Appropriately.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah.
I would like to add though, that from a stakeholder point of view, most companies do have government relations managers, and those government relations managers do attend meetings with government entities, with embassies, and they are invited on a fairly regular basis. It's advisable that they have very good relations, that they set up those relations with embassies. They keep them up to date about whatever is happening, what kind of support they will need from them in future. And in that way, from my experience in government, it worked very well. It worked very well because we understood that whatever the company was going to undertake was in the best interest of the country as well. And as such, we would actually proceed to assist. And it's against that background that I recommend or advise companies to ensure that their government relations team is agile. If they don't have it, they can turn to you as Bloomfield, they can turn to us, and we are ready to assist in managing that kind of a process for them. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Tiba. Wow. We've gained so much understanding today. Thank you. We've learned about the e-visas and the processes and the new changes or updates that have been put in place in the South African visa application processes, which clearly, try to make the processes easier for people. However, there's still a few delays here and there, but yeah, it's good to know. Okay, so Mr. Tiba, I would like to ask, you have worked in the Home Affairs before, and based on your extensive experience there, can you provide insight into the criteria used by immigration officials to evaluate these visa applications? What specifics are they looking for? What can we do to buff up the visa application to prevent or at least try to alleviate the possibility of a refusal?
Yes. Thank you so much. So one of the most interesting things that we tell our clients is that when you apply for a visa, we have already touched upon it when we're talking about the e-visa, that the bank that issued it, please, they should certify their own document that this is our bank statement, we have issued it. The same applies to you if you are applying for a visa. You are being invited by myself or by anyone in South Africa or in Nigeria. The likelihood is that the embassy or any of its officials will call you to verify the information. Is this person coming to your company? What is the person coming to do? How long? And that is very, very important. But to ensure that the documents align, if a person is a director of compliance in the invitation letter, must not be director of security in the letter of confirmation from the company in Nigeria or in South Africa. They must be aligned. They must be aligned. But most importantly, even academic institutions, you have provided a degree certificate, it's verifiable and things like that. They always go out and check. Most recently, one other thing that we used to check will be even your CV. You said you have worked at this company, you have such and such years of experience. They will call that company to confirm in this year, did you have Johannes working for you in this position? And then they will check and say, Johannes has never worked here. Automatically, it calls into question a lot of things. And if you can remember, in most of the forms that you complete, you are always asked, have you ever been refused entry in any other country? And others will say no. What they forget is that governments do share information. Now, what I wanted to say here is that please be as upfront as possible so that if whoever looks at your application can be in a position to say, I'm dealing with an honest individual here. But most importantly, if I can conclude with this point, whoever is a host, whoever has written a letter, please must be available to answer the question. Most of the refusals that we have gotten came from people whose information could not be verified. because I can write a letter as Johannes. When they call me, I'm not available. When they send me an email, I can't respond. And then they'll give you a certain time frame to say, he did not respond. And as such, we could not make a decision. And to just save time, we just decide to refuse. In some other cases, they'll just send you an email and say, can you please tell your hosts to respond to our email? We've sent them an email. So those things are very, very important, are very, very important. Just be as open as possible. If there's any other information that you think can help us, please state it accordingly in your representation to an embassy. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Ms. Mapota, based on your experience as well, would you like to add any more points that we can take note of with respect to these applications?
Oh, absolutely, yes. In line with what my colleague has said, it's important that the application is compliant as possible. For an example, when you apply for an intra-company transfer skills, one of the requirements there is to have a skills transfer plan. So it's important to ensure that the skills recipient, which is a local employee, is somebody that is registered, compliant, receiving salary, is a South African citizen rather, and should the skills recipient resign from the organization, it's important that the company, they find a replacement. So that is also important in terms of compliance. And also when they apply for the critical skills visa, as my colleague colluded in the beginning, with the various types of work visas, it's important that the person qualifies, in terms of the skill that they have. They need to have the relevant NQF level, depending on the sector, as well as confirmation letter from the professional body, because that's the criteria that Home Affairs is using. So often than not, you find that there isn't any collaboration, between the qualification, the NQF level, as well as the qualification and the confirmation from the professional body, and that will result to a rejection of the application.
Yes.
Oh, wow. Awesome.
I would like to add the last point that my colleague actually reminded me in passing is the issue of conditions of the visa. We normally forget about conditions. Sometimes it can be it can be that if you are holding a work visa, you held a work visa before, and as you held a work visa before, you actually changed from the current employer to another one with that work visa that you had for the previous one. When it expires, you realize that perhaps in country, it will take a long time. Let me go and apply for it from home. The authorities normally look at those conditions, look at whether you did comply. And then for such an individuals who may have moved from one visa to another without changing the conditions of the previous one, they'll immediately refuse it because you have already shown that you don't have any respect for the regulations. So in most cases, when you also change employment, you'll find that the employer will inform the department immediately that Johannes is no longer working for us from this date. If you have not left and you decide to use exactly the same visa, you'll be caught at a later stage. So the embassies will normally look at that. That is why sometimes they will ask for a passport just to examine it quickly. They are looking at all those things to see whether you did comply in the past. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So just to recap, the important things with respect to the visa application, the bank statement needs to be certified by the bank. you need to ensure that your documents align, because when you're seeing different information, it's a clear lack of honesty already. So there's no line here. They're going to check according to the information that we have. They're going to check in with your sponsors. They're going to check in with your companies, possibly. So be as upfront as possible. Yeah, and follow the regulations. Thank you so much. That's such wonderful information. So our next question is, are there any common misconceptions about the South African visa application process that you would like to clarify? I know there's a lot of information going around, passing around, but you probably know of some of them. So are there some that you would like to clarify on this webinar call?
Yes, I'll let my colleague to touch on those because there are quite a lot.
Yes, there are quite a lot of misconceptions regarding the immigration process is concerned. I will go back to what I said in terms of what criteria the officials is using in terms of compliance and issue of the visa. When I think when Home Affairs introduced the requirement of as far as critical skills is concerned, one of the requirements is to provide a confirmation letter in terms of the skills. As the critical skills visa is based on the skill, and there has been a challenge within the engineering sector where one can prove that they have more than 10 years experience, and the NQF level with SAQA, it meets the requirement. And the challenge would be around proof of confirmation of the skill, where there's a discrepancy in terms of you have experience post-qualification or you just have experience. So Home Affairs, they've resorted to be strict in terms of adjudicating such applications and resulted in a lot of rejections and frustration. And that created the misconception to say that it is quite difficult to obtain a visa in South Africa because foreign talent will end up being frustrated in the country and consider options outside the country. And we believe that these are just misconceptions because the regulations are very clear. Once the candidate complies with the requirements, you submit the application. Where the application gets objected, you look at the reasons of the rejections. It is something that is within the law. Yes, you go back to Home Affairs and put an objection. The challenge with that process is time, because employers, they want to employ the assignee immediately in the country. But for those that are already in the country doing an extension of the same visa, they can continue to work in the same capacity and a salary. So the challenge will only be for new application. And because of that challenge, Home Affairs is aware. Hence now they have came up with a proposal of the regulations where they are now taking away that requirement of confirmation letter in terms of your skill. So with the proposed regulation, they are now saying proof of application will suffice. You don't have to wait for the assessment where Home Affairs will now differ with the outcome of that professional body. So it was a misconception, and because of the frustration and challenges that it has created, Home Affairs is taking that away. Thank you.
Thank you. So just to add on that, a very wrong misconception is the fact that perhaps South Africa does not want foreign nationals. Now, for a person who does not know South Africa, may not know that this is a country that has been having foreign nationals for time immemorial. We always say this is a country that was built on the backs of foreign nationals for years, decades and decades and decades. And if you see our immigration law, it's actually being amended on a fairly regular basis to try to accommodate just that. Most recently, I think last year, the critical skill list was updated 3 years, 2 to 3 times, just to add the skills of people that we need, that we don't have. And that continues to prove that. The other one is just that, especially in the area of tourism, we try to be as competitive as possible. Surely before the end of September, we should be having a digital nomad visa. And that shows just how welcoming we are. We are not discounting the fact that there may be issues with the delivery of service, and those deliveries of service do not mean at all that we don't want anyone to come to our country, but they just mean that unfortunately the system did not work as intended. But the authorities are mindful about that, and as such, they continue to assure us that they will do their best to be better. You'll note that one of the changes that we have implemented at the moment is what we call a trusted employer scheme, because the authorities realize that employers who are, how can I put it, good corporate citizens, those who are compliant in all respects, were found to be having a lot of issues in acquiring talent from abroad. And the authorities decided to designate them, to allow them to apply to be part of such a scheme. And as a result, their applications will, from the 1st of March, actually be accepted with reduced requirements. And that speaks a lot of our determination that we should welcome everyone who has or who can add value to the kind of society that we are or that we like to be. Thank you.
Yeah, I believe South Africa is it's a very peculiar country in Africa because it seems to have the most population of different people from all over the world, actually.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That is true.
Yeah.
Thanks.
What an incredible session we've had so far. The wealth of knowledge is just golden. So as we continue, we'd like to take it a step beyond just visas and get into residency, like residency options, working, investing in South Africa. And Ms. Mapota, I would like to ask, what avenues are available to individuals that would like to obtain a permanent residency in South Africa?
Thank you. There are various avenues that one can obtain permanent residence. One first must obtain a temporary resident visa, which is important as a first step. Temporary resident visa, either in the form of a work visa, critical skills visa, and a general work visa, will enable the holder to obtain a permanent residence in the country.
Yeah.
With the general work visa, it will be after 5 years. If you qualify, you meet all the requirements. With the critical skills visa, will be immediate. So those two work visa will qualify the holder to apply for PR. And another form of acquiring permanent resident is through retirement visa. Okay, one can apply for retirement visa in South Africa, and after 5 years or 3 years, also that's debatable when, but a permanent resident can be obtained through that visa. And also, one can qualify through investor's visa, which we call a business visa. A business visa, first issuance of the business visa, it's through the temporary resident visa. Upon renewal of that, you can apply for permanent residence. That is also dependent on the sustainability of the business. Once you do the second renewal of the temporary resident visa, you can qualify for the permanent visa. And the other option that is available to apply for PR is through the spousal visa. Through the spousal visa, you still obtain your temporary resident visa for 5 years. After 5 years, you qualify for permanent residence. And lastly, one avenue I can talk about is the financial independence visa. So that is based on the worldwide income, you know, that a person can apply. If you can prove to Home Affairs that you have 12 million to show that you can live on it. And those are the avenues that one can qualify for permanent residence.
Awesome.
I would like to add. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, ma'am.
Okay. So what I also wanted to add is that with these types of permanent resident visa, there are conditions attached to that. The condition will be for the spousal visa, there will be a 2-year period where you need to comply and remain married to your spouse for 2 years before the permit becomes, it lapses null and void because the relationship is no longer in existence. And also one needs to consider that if you travel outside South Africa and you reside to other countries, you need to be aware that the visa, there is that condition of 3 years, 3 consecutive years. If you stay away for 3 consecutive years, the visa might be cancelled. Yeah. Do you want to add something, Mr. Tiba?
Yes, yes. I really wanted to add more on the issue of staying longer outside South Africa. And most importantly, that permanent residency leads you to citizenship. If you like to be citizens after 5 years of having of being on permanent residency status, yes, you can apply for naturalization. But of great importance is that from time to time, what we have noted is that your company may decide to send you somewhere to go on an assignment of about 3-4 years. So it's always advisable to apply for what you call a retention of permanent residency. Now, retention of permanent residency works like this, that if, for instance, you're a spouse of a South African citizen, you are an employee of an organization to which South Africa is a member. That can be your UN, IMF, whatever. And 3, if you are being seconded to a company that's also based in South Africa, you will not lose your PR. But it's advisable to apply for the retention. Before you leave, inform the Director General that I will be leaving South Africa for so many years. I intend to come back home and I would like to retain my permanent residency, because our permanent residency in South Africa is permanent. But if you break it by deciding to leave in the process after 3 years of absence, you will lose it. Now, from my experience, you've noted that when you break it by maybe regular visits of a month, 2 months, 2 weeks, you are fine. You are fine. You have not been completely absent from the Republic. So that is the most important point that we always like people who are on permanent residence to please take it, keep it at the back of their minds. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You've answered my questions and beyond, actually. So at least now we know it's clear that the South African permanent residency is not time bound. It's perpetual, right? But you can lose it if you're away from the country for more than 3 years, 3 consecutive years, right? Which can be broken by, frequent visits, maybe 2 months, 2 weeks into the country. Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Would like to know, what are the benefits and challenges that may be associated with this South African permanent residency? In terms of benefits, do they have the same benefits with citizens of South Africa? And then what challenges might they have, by just being or holding the permanent residency?
So permanent residency, go ahead. You can go, ma'am.
Okay,
Thanks.
yeah, I can add. I think with a permanent residence, one, you will consider that before obtaining permanent residence, you had a temporary resident visa that you have to renew from time to time. So with a permanent resident visa, you don't have to renew it. It's there for you until, the end. And another benefit with that, you enjoy the benefits and the rights of a South African. You can change employers without having to change the condition of your of your status in the country. You know, there is a condition of the status and condition of the state. So your status will remain in the country as a permanent resident holder. But the condition of employment, that's when you will have to change the visas from time to time to be company specific. But once you obtain PR, you don't have to notify Home Affairs. You know, you can change employer as in like that. The only thing that you don't enjoy is to vote. You don't have the right to vote. You can enjoy any right as a South African citizen except for voting. Yes, you want to add, Mr. Tiba?
Yes. I just wanted to add that even if you can see in as far as jobs are concerned, when it's put in the law, it says that to protect the labor market for South African citizens and permanent residents. So you are really in a secure place in that regard. The law is very specific. Permanent residents are part of our society, and therefore they get as much protections as possible. But what I wanted to point out, though, is that in terms of the law, there are cases where you find that permanent residence can be withdrawn, where one has been involved in serious offenses. It can be racketeering, money laundering, that will be withdrawn. That will be withdrawn. If, for instance, you are found to have been involved in that, you have been convicted in a court of law, maybe and sentenced to over a year, it will certainly be withdrawn. It will certainly be withdrawn. So, but most of the permanent residents don't get involved in that. You'll just find a minority of that. But most notably, authorities do follow through on such cases of people who hold permanent residence and have been involved in that. They normally withdraw and then deport the person accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Also would like to know, how does the permit application process, that is aside the fact that you have to get the temporary residency first, how does it now differ from the regular visa application process? And also, are the processes different for each of these? So the investor, the process for getting it through the investment route, is it simpler than the other processes? Or the other types of the other ways of getting the permanent residency?
Okay. The process of permanent residence, I think my colleague did point out that normally temporary residence lays foundation for it. And in most cases, the requirements, the way I've seen the requirements are slightly the same. They're slightly the same, but what will be different will be the process in terms of the checks that are being that are undertaken and the length of time it takes to finalize the case. Now, in South Africa, what the authorities have tended to do has been to give priority to those who are having critical skills. And it's part of the attraction and retention of such a talent. Generally, we've seen critical skills, those who are applying for PR under critical skills being finalized quicker together with their family members. And the difficulty, though, comes for those through spouses. Spouses, you'll find that in some cases, within a short space of time, the relationship is no longer subsisting. It means that even if they can issue it with conditions that you have to report to the Department of Home Affairs by such and such a time. And if you come to apply for PR, both of you must appear and sign in front of the official. So it's the process time, the timeline, it can be between 6 to 12 months. But I would like to add though, that one of the legacies of COVID is that we have a huge backlog in that area. The officials are now going through it. The last time we checked, they were telling me that they are around end of 2022, and this is 2024. And they continue to go through those applications. And we expect that the backlog will take time to be finally cleared, and so that we can return to normalcy of within 6 months to a year.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much for that.
All right. I just want to add there on your question, how does it differ for a business, the process rather for a business investor? The process, as my colleague has said, it is pretty much the same. However, with the business visa, there are two stakeholders that one needs to consider. For an example, for the business visa, you consider the Department of Trade and Investment. So they are the ones that need to recommend the type of business that you want to invest in South Africa. It's also based on the sector, because there are certain sectors that are more interesting. For example, your manufacturing and IT, those are the sectors that we need to invest in as South Africa. So because of that additional leg going through the DTI, which is the Department of Trade and Investment, it is an additional processing time to the normal processing time of an ordinary individual visa. So I just wanted to add that.
Yes. So another thing that, thanks very much for that point, is that even when you come as an investor, there are certain certain businesses or types of businesses that are considered undesirable. It can be those that are importing cars, for instance. We manufacture cars in South Africa. You can import a car. If you are going to maybe having a place where ladies of the night are working, it's not business, it's undesirable. The authorities won't approve that. But there are actually identified sectors of great importance in South Africa if you are going to invest. That will be your manufacturing sector. Those, the second one, that will be advanced manufacturing. That is maybe if you are dealing with robotics, it can be green technology. If you are in service industry, it's very, very important because this one is the backbone of the economy. Resource intensive sector like your mining, energy and infrastructure. Those are the critical sectors that you find that are very, very important. And those sectors, if you're in those sectors, it's actually a shoe in for you as if you're applying as an investor at the PR.
Okay. So speaking of investment, what is the investment threshold for you to become a permanent resident, for you to get the permanent residency in South Africa? I know for countries like Canada, they have minimum investment threshold of like $200,000. So like, what is it for South Africa?
For South Africa, the threshold is 5 million rands. And if the applicant or the proposed investor does not qualify, they can opt to apply for an exemption. So in this case, they will approach the Department of Home Affairs after they have been recommended that the business, it will be viable in South Africa. Then they approach Home Affairs for the remainder of the 5 million, depending on how much they have. So there is still that process where they can ask for exemption from Home Affairs. But to answer the question, it's 5 million rands.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the clarification. So we have some questions in
before you proceed, the most important thing, especially as a business and investor, the business must be able to create employment. At least 60% of your staff establishment must be locals, South African citizens or permanent residents. I just wanted to add that point. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. So we have a few questions in the question and answer section, but there are a few more questions I have on immigration policies, and we'd like to address some of those developments because they're making a lot of headlines lately, and it's important that we gain better understanding and just clarify from our experts. So firstly, we understand that South Africa plans to introduce a digital nomad visa, which you had also mentioned during this call. I think you said September is the timeline they're looking towards. Can you provide insight into this proposed visa? We know there are other nations like Namibia, Cape Verde that have implemented this so far, but would like to know what the eligibility criteria would be for South Africa, the limitations, if any, the necessary requirements, and a confirmation of sorts on the current processes that are going into the implementation.
Thank you so much. I would like to point out that the issue of the nomad or digital nomad visa or remote working visa is part of the proposal that has been made in the recent amendment of the South African immigration law that is undergoing public consultation. So according to the proposal of the Department of Home Affairs, is that they will introduce the digital nomad visa. Digital nomad visa was actually proposed by a task team that was set up by the president to review the visa system. And some of the things that the task team proposed was that a trusted employer scheme is very important. It can actually benefit employers in South Africa, especially those that are having a lot of expats. Two was to have a sort of a startup visa for those who like to have startups in South Africa. Three, digital nomad visa. A digital nomad visa, the reason for the digital nomad visa was simple, was that this trend of having people who are digital nomad is going to be with us for a long time. And it's an easy way of attracting tourism to your country. Now there's a term that they use in South Africa. They refer them to birds. They say they are swallows, like a birds called swallows, that when it's winter, it flies somewhere. When it's summer, it goes back to wherever it comes from. So they call them swallows in South Africa. And they say that these are people who can actually help to drive our tourism sector. The eligibility criteria is as follows. The regulations propose at least that you must earn a salary of 1 million rands. You must earn a salary of 1 million rands. And then when we checked it last time, it was in the neighborhood of 54 USD, 54,000 USD to 57,000 USD. And then the second point is that it will be issued for 6 months minimum. Maximum, it will be issued for 12 months, and it will be renewable. Now, if you will be staying for more than 6 months, you'll be required to register with tax authorities. I think it's because of that time where you find that you exceed 183 days. Therefore, you are considered a taxpayer in South Africa in terms of having your worldwide income rule. So that's the minimum, the proposals that have been made. As a firm, we had a look at those proposals. Our view is that that may be a bit steeper $54,000 because they are looking at a gross. And if you have a look at the remaining amount after you have paid your rent, your food, your transportation, what is normally left is at least $1,000 to even $1,500. So we were making proposals that it actually must be reviewed. $1,500 is something like 28,000 Rand. And then we made proposals that please don't look at the gross, look at what is left, that what a person can live on while in South Africa. Two, we were also proposing that the authorities can look at even your additional stream of income. Other people are fortunate to be having a rental income that is coming in every month to complement their salaries. Others may be having dividends that they're getting quite regularly and things like that. So that is our proposal in this regard, that if it is in that area, we believe that it will be competitive. It will be in the slightly better than the one of Namibia. Namibia is something like $2,000 per adult. It will be 1,000 for a spouse, 500 for a child. And Mauritius, we noted that is slightly the way we want us to be, of 1,200, 1,500. The best is also only Seychelles that says if you can be able to look after yourself, but the duration is very small. It's very small. So we looked at that when we were making a kind of proposal in that area. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that clarity. Really, really, really helps. Thank you so much, Mr. Tiba. So as of now, can we say there is a particular proposed date, or we're still on the proposal?
Yes, thank you so much. So the proposal, the inputs must be in by the 29th of March. So normally we understand that the authorities can take a month to two. But if you remember well, we'll be having elections by the 29th of March. And then normally after 29th of March, the new government must be in by June 12, around that. So we think maybe by June, July, or finally September, we can see them coming. But the beauty of these regulations is that because these are ministerial regulations, they are actually effective on publication. Once the final ones are published, they will be effective. They'll be effective. So it's against that background that we continue to advise people that please make your input so that it can be a well-rounded kind of option that is available for digital nomads.
Thank you so much, Mr. Tiba. Thank you so much. Lastly, we know of one other update that I would also like to clarify on, which is that we understand that the government also plans to introduce a point-based immigration system. Could you also provide further details about this policy, the objectives, what's it after, the expected implementation timeline, if we have that already, the eligibility criteria, necessary requirements about it as well?
Yes, the point-based immigration system was also put in the proposed regulations. So the point-based immigration system is quite an interesting type of immigration system. It's actually flexible in terms of managing demands or needs of the country. Now, if, for instance, the country needs a certain number of people, they can actually reduce the points nicely to be able to attract more people. If there's a demand from outside that the country has managed to meet its own needs, they can actually increase that. So that is the beauty of it. But two is that it's very objective. It's very objective in that it looks at you as an applicant. It looks at your own attributes as an applicant. Now, many countries have the point-based immigration system. You are familiar with it in Canada, in the United States, Australia, and New Zealand. Now, in our case, the authorities have actually proposed that they look at about some of the areas that they look at will include your age, your qualifications, the language skills, the experience, and most importantly, the last one, we're joking with it with my colleague. The last one is called flexibility to live in South Africa. So our view was, when looking at these things, we agree with that, but we are of the view that flexibility to live in South Africa, it's actually something that you can measure. But what you can be able to tell, though, is that by applying for a work visa to work in South Africa already shows your flexibility. So it's actually not that serious a criterion that you can look at. However, what we recommend is that the authorities can look at issues such as your salary level. Is the salary market related? And then be able to pitch it at that level. The other thing that we're looking at was that the issue of the sector. Is the person going to be employed in a strategic sector of the economy? You remember I spoke about them saying that it's manufacturing, advanced manufacturing, the service sector, resources, your engineer, your infrastructure, and your energy. If a person, we propose that if a person is going to be employed in those sectors, that should be a good criterion to focus on. Above that, we also go further to propose that authorities can also look at the bonus points. Bonus points, let me make an example of qualifications. Qualifications, if you are an expert, you have your wife who is a qualified chartered accountant staying at home. That person is a resource that we already have, that we can benefit from in the country. And that resource can also add more points for you. You can get a bonus points. We're proposing that even the bonus points be looked at a way to pick up the scores of people. On the issue of qualifications, we also look at bonus points for those who acquired qualifications locally. The reason here is just to attract and retain the talent that we've created. But finally, we're also proposing even issues of bonus points for experience. If you have experience from outside, it's very important because that experience will help us to build experience, to build talent locally. So those are some of the proposals that we were encouraging our clients to look at, because in terms of experience, what we also loaded was that some clients have people who are working up until the age of 65. We were encouraging them that please also include that age group of 65 so that you can continue to benefit from your own internal resources that you can second somewhere. And the same applies to qualifications. There are people who grow up in companies. When they left high school, they actually continue to work in that company for decades. And as such, they don't have any other qualifications except workplace-related qualifications. But if those workplace-related qualifications are measurable in terms of saying that this is a vocational training course level 1, level 2. That must also be considered. So this some of the proposals that we've been running to our clients to take note of. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Tiba. Thank you so much. We do hope these proposals are taken up on favorably because they're really, it's so good for people that would like to look into moving to South Africa on a work visa and other visas like this. So wow, it's been such an amazing time, and so we don't take too much of our audience's time anymore. Miss Mapota has answered, for those that put in their questions in the question and answer section, Miss Mapota has provided answers to most of them, and I believe she's still answering some other questions. So we'll be rounding up this webinar in a few minutes. If you still have questions, you can send them to our email and they would be answered favorably. Just before we go, Mr. Tiba, Ms. Mapota, if you have any other thing to just add to the wealth of knowledge that we already received in this webinar, would appreciate hearing, from you. It's been such an amazing time. My notes is literally filled with so much, good stuff, so much good stuff. Thank you so much. Just to hear from you one last time.
On my side, if I can just jump in quickly, just to thank you so much for organizing this this event. I think it has been an eye-opener, but quite an exciting experience to share our knowledge with our clients and those who like to know more about South Africa. But of great importance that I would like to say is that South Africa is open for business. We really need talent. But most importantly, if you need assistance, please reach out to us. Bloomfield has been our partner for quite a long time. Reach out to them, and then they'll also reach out to us for any assistance in this regard. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Tiba.
Indeed, just in closing, I know one of the misconceptions from the applicants, they believe that they can do the visa application processes for themselves because information is easily available on the website. I would like to encourage them to do a thorough research and engage with a professional that will assist them because the legal framework and the regulations, they change, without prior notice, and it will be one of the advantage and benefit to have a legal advisor or a consultant that can advise you accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to our esteemed panelists. We're so grateful that you made this call. To the audience, this call has been recorded and the recorded version will be sent to your email, I think not too long after the call, so you can always access it, or on our Instagram account, which is Bloomfield LP as well. We'll also be posting snippets of this because it can't just go away. Thank you so much for joining this call. If your question was not answered, or if you have more questions, you can send an email to us at bloomfieldlaw.com. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much. Cheers.
Thank you.